Okay, pre-calculus, we are going to be starting Chapter 2. And as you can tell, the homework assignment is to watch the lesson at home, making sure that you turn your sound on, put your earbuds in, and take very nice notes. So will you please turn your sound on? I do not want you watching these videos unless you can hear me. Okay, it's going to be like I'm at home giving you a personalized lesson. So everything that I do in the notes here for Section 2.1, you need to write in your notes. And I'm going to be checking tomorrow to make sure you have all these nice notations down and you have all the good work. Okay, evaluating functions. So everything in Chapter 2 is going to be written in f of x form. Of course, it could be g of x, h of x, m of x, any letter. All the different functions have different names, but it's of variable x. So when it says f of x is 3x squared plus 5x, they want us to plug in a 2. Okay, so this right here is kind of like the y equals. So it's just a regular equation. We're going to plug in a 2. 3 times 2 squared plus 5 times 2. So everywhere there was a variable x, that's where I plugged in the 2. So we've got f of 2 equaling 3 times 4 plus 10. So f of a 2 equals 22. A couple of things I'm going to be very picky about, so make sure you're writing this down nicely. F of 2 tells everybody what number you evaluated. I plugged in a 2, so this is f of a 2. This isn't f of a 5, this isn't f of 10, this isn't f of x. This is f of a 2, and that answer spit out. Okay. Part B, they want us to plug in a negative x. So once again, into all the x places, into all the inputs, I need to put in a negative x. It's going to be very important to use parentheses here. So the formula says 3. Your input has to get squared. Your input has to get squared, and our input is negative x. Wait, we're not done. Plus 5 times input. Plus 5 times input, and our input was a negative x. You must use parentheses, and now we have to clean this up. Don't forget to say f of negative x. It tells everybody what you evaluated. So this formula with a negative x in it is positive 3x squared minus 5x. Remember PEMDAS, order of operations, exponents come first, and then multiplying. All right. The next one says f of 2x. So into all the input places, wherever there's an x, I need to put in a 2x. Okay, the formula says 3. Then it says input squared. So that's where you put the input, and there's where you're going to put the input. And our input is a 2x, so make sure you use parentheses. 2x, all of that has to get squared, plus 5 times your input. And what's our input? Let's go take a look. 2x. All right, order of operations say that we do exponents first. F of 2x is 3. 2x times 2x is 4x squared plus 10x. So f of 2x equals 12x squared plus 10x. That is f of 2x. Okay, for the last example here, they want us to plug in a whole quantity. All right, this can be done. Once again, we have to look at the formula, and we have to focus on where the input goes. The f function, the f formula says 3. Okay. Then it says input has to get squared. I'm just going to put some parentheses, squared, and I'll put the input in there in just a second. F says write a plus sign. Then he says 5 times your input. 5 times your input. Okay, I've got inputs. I got parentheses here. And the input we're plugging in is x plus 2. So x plus 2 is going to go there, and x plus 2 is going to go there. All right, we got some work to do here. F of x plus 2 is 3. Exponents is going to come first, and that answer is going to go there. Now, if you need to write x plus 2 times x plus 2 and write it down 2 times, that might be helpful because we have to make sure that we get our outers and our inners. That's plus 4x plus 4. Again, if you're confused on how to multiply, write it down 2 times on a piece of scratch paper. Let's go ahead and distribute a positive 5 plus 5x plus 10. And I am going to try to speed things up here a little bit. I am going to distribute and add these together at the same time. So 3x squared is the only 3x squared term, plus 12x plus 5, that's going to be 17x's, plus 12 plus 10 is 22. Again, if you need to take more steps than this to show more work, then you can go ahead and do that. All right, let's do some more evaluating. We're going to evaluate the function f of x. Here it is. Okay. Is this 3 going into the f function? No. Okay, this 3 is out in front. It's 3 times the f of x. That 3 is in front of f of x. So what I think I'm going to do is put some brackets here, and I'm going to put the 3 out in front. It says 3 times the f of x function. And the f of x function is 2x squared minus 4x. So 3 does not go into the function. It's just going to get multiplied to all the terms of the function. So 3 times f of x is 6x squared minus 12x. Okay, that one might cause people some trouble because sometimes people plug it into the function, but that's not where it goes. Okay, and this one right here, I think I'm going to color code for you because it's got 2 different things happening. They want us to do f of x, which is just the f of x function, but then they want us to add it to f of 5. All right, that's going to be kind of weird. So in green, I'm going to write down the f of x function. I'm going to write down 2x squared minus 4x. Now, they want me to add f of a 5. So they want me to add on, and I can maybe even use some brackets here if this is easier for you to understand. F of a 5. 5, okay, is the input. That number has to go into f. So if I put 5 into f, I need to do 2 times 5 squared minus 4 times a 5. When you plug a number into a function, you're going to get a number. But this wasn't a function. That was just f of x with x's. Okay, so this is going to be 2x squared minus 4x plus, oh, let's see how good you guys are. Please calculate that for me. No, come on, really calculate. I'm not going to tell you until you figure it out. Oh, good. You got positive 30. Positive 30. I do want to make sure that I label my answer. I don't like how it's not labeled here. What is this? This is f of x plus f of a 5. Kind of weird, but that's what it is. The f of an x plus an f of a 5. Okay, here's a nice word problem that has some meaning to it. We're going to have to plug numbers into different parts of the function. Okay, a rock falls from a height of 15 meters. And the h is in meters, after x seconds is represented by that formula. Okay, so x seconds is the time. It seems like x right there is the time. There's the time variable. And it says h is the height in meters. So that's this entire left-hand side here. Okay, this is the height. Now I know that it says h of x because it's function notation, but it's kind of like y equals blah, 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 x. That is the entire h side. Now when it says what is the height after 1.1 seconds, that is time. That needs to go into the x spot. And you're trying to find the height. So what we're going to calculate here is h of 1.1. We're going to plug 1.1 into the formula, and it's going to tell us the height. 15 minus 4.9 times 1.1 squared is approximately, let's go ahead and use our calculators for that. Did you get 9.07? Rounded nicely to two places, except we need to put some meaning into this. It said, what is the height? Well, the height is 9.07 what? We have to look here for the units, and it's meters. All right, let's answer some more questions here. When is the height 10 meters? 10 meters is the height. That's going to go into the H spot. And when, that's X. So now we're going to find X, and we're going to plug 10 into the H spot. So looking at our equation, the H, the Y side, is going to be 10 equals 15 minus 4.9x squared. We're going to solve for the X. First thing I'll do is I'll minus 15 and get negative 5 equals negative 4.9x squared. The next thing I'll do is divide by negative 4.9. Cancel, cancel. So I will be needing my calculator for this. I know the negatives are going to cancel. 5 divided by 4.9. Okay, makes a big, long decimal. Now I don't want to chop it because I still have more calculating to do. It's 1.0204 ... equals x squared. So I still have one more step, and that would be to square root the answer. So you don't want to chop this at any point. I want to square root the entire answer. Fancy calculators, you can go up and grab it. If not, you could always push second answer. It's right there above the negative sign. But you do not want to type 1.02. You want to take all these decimals plus more that's in the calculator's memory. And x is approximately 1.01 seconds. Something else we could have done is we could have square rooted 5 divided by 4.9. And that would have come out correct. Very accurate. And then you round at the very end. You don't chop, keep working, chop, keep working. Okay, when does the rock, so when is X, strike the ground? Strike the ground. What kind of height is that? What kind of height is the ground? Here it said the height was 10, so I let H be a 10. But now it says ground, so I'm going to let H be a 0. Okay, so 0 equals 15 minus 4.9x squared. Maybe this time I'll move the 4.9 to the left, and then it'll become positive. And we'll divide both sides by 4.9. So x squared is 15 divided by 4.9. So square root that fraction. X is approximately equal to, I think I'll use that fancy fraction button. I showed you this before. It's, well, first let's type square root. It's alpha y equals, and it's command number 1. So the square root of 15 over 4.9 is approximately 1.7. Let's round to two places nicely. 5, and since it's a word problem, let's give it some meaning. This is when, and the answer for when says seconds. Seconds. So there's plugging in for the x spot, the y spot, and then 0 for the y spot. So that is a little bit of work with function notation, and the reason why we're doing that is to get you ready for something you're going to do in calculus a lot, and that's the difference quotient. Okay? The difference quotient has f of x plus h minus f of x all over h. There's three things happening here. And what I'm going to highly recommend we do first is the hard part and kind of get some of that work written down. So I'm always going to recommend that we calculate f of x plus h first. Okay, so there's two steps. Step 1, and then we're going to separate our paper. and step 2. In step 1, we're going to calculate f of x plus h because it's kind of complicated. And then in step 2, I'll actually go for the answer. I'll actually find the difference quotient. So then you have to label your work difference quotient equals. Please just don't start doing work equals and just squish it all together. These are 2 separate calculations. Okay. How does this work? F of x. So he says take your input and square it. Take your input and square it. Then he says plus 5 times your input. So x represents input. But we're going to be putting in a whole quantity. Okay, so what we need to do is say input squared. I'm going to say parentheses squared plus 5 times input. So we've got 2 input places there. And the input we're putting in is the quantity x plus h. X plus h. This quantity is going in, needs to go in there into that spot and that spot. I'm going to say this a couple more times because some people don't quite get it, the first explanation. F of x says take your input and square it. Plus 5 times your input. Sometimes saying the formula with words helps you know what to write down. Your input has to get squared. Plus 5 times your input. Okay, since this part is rather complex, I like to do all this work first. Now we have to go ahead and FOIL this out, and I am going to write this down 2 times. X plus h plus x plus h. This one here will distribute a 5. The reason why I'm writing it is it happens a lot. The more you see it, the more you'll be familiar, you'll be more successful. First is x squared. Outers is plus xh plus another xh, so plus 2xh plus h squared. Sometimes when people just do it right away, they say x squared plus h squared. They forget the middles. Plus 5x plus 5h. Are there any terms here that we can add together? No, we can't. Okay, let's go back up to the difference quotient. The difference quotient says huge fraction. F of x plus h goes first, then we minus stuff, put it over h. Okay, I think I'm ready for difference quotient now. The difference quotient says, difference quotient. So please stop calling that stuff f of x plus h and start doing your difference quotient now. It says big fraction with an h in the bottom. And what does it say to put in the beginning? Well, I already have that work right here, so I'm going to write this answer down. I already calculated that, and that is by far the hardest part. Okay, now what does the difference quotient say? It says I have to subtract f of x. I have to subtract f of x. F of x is right here. So should I minus the x squared or minus the 5x? And the answer is you have to subtract both of them. I have to minus x squared and I have to minus 5x. I have to subtract both of them. Okay, the f of x plus h quantity. Then I subtracted all the terms of f of x and put your h. Okay, let's make sure we use equal signs because this line is going to become something else. You must put equal signs between your steps. At this point, you can tell if you're doing it right if stuff starts to cancel. X squared minus x squared cancel. A negative 5x with a positive 5x. So what we have now is 2xh plus h squared plus 5h all over h. Okay? So if stuff cancels, smiley face, looking good. Okay. The next thing is to take care of all these h's. Okay, and the best hint I could give you, the hint that it always works, is factor. So what I'm going to do is factor an h out of the top. They all seem to have an h. And again, if you're doing it right, this will always happen. Factor out an h. Smiley face if that's working for you. 2x plus h plus 5 all over h. Okay, getting really close to the answer now. Once again, if you're doing this right, there will always be an h to cancel with an h. H divided by h is 1. And we get 2x plus h plus 5. I am going to make sure that I label this difference quotient. Okay, so at the very end, cancel h. That's always going to happen if you're doing it right. Okay, I think I need to do one more just to make sure you get the hang of these. We are going to practice all these things in class tomorrow. To find the difference quotient, I recommended doing this in 2 steps. Okay, so step 1 was to calculate f of x plus h. And then the second step was to calculate the difference quotient. And I'm going to draw a little line here just to make sure that it's clear. These are 2 separate calculations. I'm going to use this answer in this huge fraction, but I have to find it first. Okay, what does f of x say this time? It says 2 times input squared, there's an input, minus 3 times input, plus 1. And I have a quantity going in as an input. Look at this huge input. Okay, let's say this in words again. If I say it in English, then I'll do that. 2 times input squared. Okay, 2 times input squared. And what's the input? That quantity x plus h. Let's keep going. Now f says subtract 3 times your input. Okay, subtract 3. And what's the input? This quantity here. And then f says add a 1. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do some work here. We've got 2. Since you've seen this once, you might know the answer already. X plus h times x plus h is x squared plus, don't forget the outers and the inners, 2xh plus h squared. Let's distribute a negative 3 minus 3x minus 3h plus 1. So f of x plus h is 2x squared plus 4xh plus 2h squared minus 3x minus 3h plus 1. Which terms can be added together? I don't think any of them can ever be added together. Okay, now that is the hard part about difference quotient. Hey, without peeking, the difference quotient is a huge fraction. Who remembers what goes in the bottom? Just that little h. Then it's f of something big and f of something small. What goes here? This is x plus h. This is f of x. And what do you put in the middle? A minus sign. Okay, I'm ready to start calculating the difference quotient. That's the formula. Good to have handy. The huge fraction with h in the bottom. The first thing we have to put is f of x plus h, which we already calculated. Thank goodness, because that was a lot of work. 2x squared plus 4xh plus 2h squared minus 3x minus 3h plus 1. Okay, so I have the f of x plus h. Now it's time to subtract f of x. It's time to subtract f of x. So go way up to the top, look for f of x. We have to subtract this guy. I have to subtract 2x squared. I have to subtract the negative 3. How do you subtract a negative? That's going to be plus 3x. And then I have to subtract the 1. So you take f of x and you change all of them to the opposites. Okay, remember what's going to happen if we're doing this correctly? Don't forget your equal sign. Things should cancel. Okay, a lot of things are going to cancel here. 2x squared with a negative 2x squared, negative 3x, positive 3x, plus 1 minus 1. Okay, remember, lots of stuff should cancel if you're doing it right. Don't forget your big fraction bar with your h. You can't just magically bring that back later. It's always part of the steps. We have 4xh plus 2h squared minus 3h. Yep, I think that's it. Everything that you have should have a lot of h's by it. Okay, so the next step is always to factor an h out. They should all have an h to give up. So he just has 4x left plus 2h minus 3. Look at that. Factor out an h. That should always happen. Canceling out an h will always happen, and the difference quotient for this function is 4x plus 2h minus 3. I can't wait to see you guys tomorrow to see how this went, that you have great notes. We're going to practice this in class. Okay? At the end of a lesson, I want you to read these. Can you use function notation to evaluate? That means plug in. Can you plug in numbers? Yes. Can you state the formula for difference quotient without looking? I'll quiz you tomorrow, see if you can. Can you find the difference quotient? Well, we'll practice in class, and hopefully you can. Good job, everybody.